You just press play on the Last Breath Huntcast, home of the Huntroversy. We're here to entertain, educate, and engage. And in case you didn't know, you only live once. But if you do it right, once is enough. Don't waste it.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Again, we don't care what time of the day it is. We're just happy you're here listening to us. This is the Last Breath Huntcast. My name is Garrett Bulkus, and the host of this podcast sitting across from me, Grant. Hello.
Hi.
Hi. This is episode 91, and we're hitting you with a huntroversy that was listener requested. We love the feedback you guys give us, and we do honestly take it to the bank, stock them up, and talk about them. So our huntroversy today is one that I'm excited to talk about. It's something that maybe is irrelevant for us right now, but I think it will be very relevant to a lot of our listeners and for the future of the industry. But before we do that, we need to pay the bills and talk about some of the people that make this podcast possible. So I'd like to talk about a new partner of ours. That's Underwarmer. So if you listen to us religiously, you've heard us talk about it. We're getting into the warmer kind of months of the year. So this might be something that you just plant in the back of your mind and think about here come fall. And again, Underwarmer it's a compression fitting heated base layer. They're very economical. They're light on the pocketbook and they work really well. There are 4 pads in the front and 4 pads in the back that are air activated. You get about 12 hours of sustained warm heat. It's next to your body, and it really is going to allow you to cut down on your layers and allow you to be more comfortable longer when you're out in those outdoor activities. So again, I think that there's applications both in the outdoor niche and outside of it. And I'm telling you, as I've said before, I was skeptical at first. I'm a believer now. After you wear it, you will be impressed with just how, like I said, comfortable you can stay when you're out in the field or out somewhere where you want to stay warm.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to echo that point too. It's really impressive how warm they get. The fact that it doesn't burn your skin is incredible, and just the amount of layers they allow you to cut down when you're out in the field when it's extremely cold. The other partner of this podcast, who actually presents our podcast, is Badlands Gear. Very excited, very proud, very happy to be working with Badlands. This is our 3rd season that we're going into wearing Badlands camo, and I myself, from a camo standpoint, I just think that during the midday especially, the approach camouflage pattern absolutely melts into the woods. There's times where you're reaping and you're on a field edge, and if I don't see the reaper decoy in front of you, it's hard for me to pick you up with my eyes when you're over 150 yards away. So really impressed with the look and how it just melts in. And I actually have an interesting story. So my Pyre suit's my favorite suit by Badlands. It's the cold weather system, and it enables us to hunt down to like sub-zero temperatures. Like this year, in fact, the day that we killed your doe, it was I want to say like -8 degrees real feel, very extremely cold, and it's just an incredible piece of camo. And over time, the belt straps, suspender straps that is, on the Pyre bibs had worn out. So all I did was I went to badlandsgear.com. I filed a warranty, which is exactly like when you order a product. So you go down to the bottom section of their website and you click on warranty and repair, I believe, and then you pay $12 so that way they can ship it back to you. And the interesting thing about this was I printed my warranty receipt on a Friday. I took it to ship it out on a Saturday morning to my local USPS store. And then after that, or was it UPS? One of the two. I ship it out, and then that following Monday, not Monday as in 2 days after, but Monday as in the following Monday. So they would only had it for 5 business days. It shipped from Illinois to Utah, got repaired, got shipped back to Illinois, and was sitting on my doorstep on that following Monday, 5 business days later, with a free hat and a free decal in there.
And the cool thing is,
that's impressive to me.
So impressive.
And everything is fixed, and it's like, wow, that's fucking awesome.
Yep.
Like, that's how you back a product. That's like, and it has a lifetime warranty.
You can send it in.
You can send it in
many times as you need to.
And that's highly impressive to me that they're willing to back the product like that, and you just pay $12 to ship it. And like I said, we're in Illinois. We are a time zone away, literally, from Utah, a 24-hour drive from the headquarters. We ship it out there, and I didn't expedite ship it or anything like that. And I'm just very impressed with the turnaround time, the fact that they threw a free hat in, like somebody that doesn't work with Badlands. Like, that's a cool courtesy to show them. Like, here you go, man. Here's a free hat. Thanks for trusting our product and believing us.
Well, and that's the other thing too. We didn't call Blake or call Badlands and say, hey, we got this issue. We just did it normal. You did it normal. Like as a normal guy that just has Badlands gear. There was no special treatment involved in this.
Nope.
And like you said, it feels great when you can work with a company that has that type of standpoint and backing of their product. So moving on, I think it's cool that we can work with guys like Underwarmer and Badlands, people who are just good companies filled with good individuals and good morals. And speaking of good people, I think we need to mention Whitetail Legacy Podcast. Those guys are solid. Every Wednesday you can check out their podcast. Goes live at 11 o'clock. And God, they're just so damn good looking too. You know, I
don't know who's better looking, Cody or Ryan.
Well, we're in the works. I think we got them talked into doing a shirtless calendar. So check that out. I mean, make sure you send them a message that you really want to see this happen. Shirtless calendar of Cody and Homie. You know, there can be, some really nice shots that we can develop with them. I think with some body paint even too. But just make sure you send them a message that you're interested in that. It's a cool product that we're going to be probably trying to get shot here. Oh, I'd say in the next couple of weeks.
We're really passionate about it. We really want to see you guys message them and ask for the calendar. So do us a favor and do that.
It's going to be like a 6-month edition. Probably launch it in July. Carry you through the winter, but just give you something to look forward to every month.
Something to warm up by fireside.
Yeah.
Thumb through.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, getting into the Huntroversy, why don't you tell them what we're going to talk about today?
All right. So our Huntroversial topic, again, listener requested today. I'll introduce it and then I'll press you on it. So when is too young of an age to introduce your kids or any other youth to hunting? There's a lot of things that we have to cover today, a lot of topics. And before we get to that, we want to throw out a quick disclaimer. Garrett and I both don't have kids, so you are probably about to hear a slightly biased perspective. Just want to point that out. But we do our due diligence and try as hard as we can, like I said, during these Huntroversies, to maintain an unbiased position and to cover both sides equally. So I just wanted to get that out there before we do this, because there may be some of you guys that are listening to our podcast for the first time and that are interested in about what we're having to say. So my first thing to you, before we actually dive real deep into it, your gut reaction. I usually like to do that first. What's the right age, in your opinion, right now, before we get to talking about this? And we'll see if your opinion's changed at the end. But what do you think immediately right now?
It's difficult to put like a number stamp on it.
But I'm asking you to.
I know you are, and I'm going to explain why. Because every kid is different, just like every kid matures differently. But if I were to throw a number out there, bam, and stick on it, in my mind, I feel like about 12, and there's about a year variable on one end or the other. And I think that just because I'm trying to think of most 8-year-olds that I know, most 10-year-olds that I know, most 12-year-olds that I know, and just thinking about practicality, what they can they sit still long enough? Can they be quiet? Are they going to be cold really easy? Are they strong enough to hold a gun, to shoot a 20 gauge, and go from there? And that's why I'm throwing out that number of 12. So that right now, knee-jerk reaction, if you wanted a whole number, that's what I'm going to give you.
Okay. Getting into a little bit of the psychology side of it. So there are all these different types and parts and pieces of the brain in human anatomy. And I thought the interesting thing that I wanted to leverage today was some of that. So the frontal lobe, which is just what it sounds like, the most front part of your brain, the one that's closest there, that kind of sits right behind and a little bit higher than where your eyes are. That is the decision-making part of the brain. And psychologists believe that it takes until about the age of 23 to 26 for that to fully develop. And that is, like I said, the decision-making part of your brain. I talk about this with my kids in class all the time. They said, Mr. Putnam, like, why do kids eat Tide Pods? Why do kids jump out of cars and do the kiki dance in the middle of the interstate? And I said, well, it's because the biggest reason is because your brain hasn't fully developed yet. Like ideas that you and I are like, well, that's stupid. Like things that we did when we were younger, that everybody's done when they're younger, that they're like, well, that's really dumb. Why did I do that? And that's because at the time it probably didn't seem like a bad idea because your decision-making portion of your brain wasn't fully developed. So I wanted to bring that up just simply because if you're taking a kid out there, more than likely they're going to make a bad decision or 2 or 10 or 20 when they're out there in that time. And it's your job, as the adult to try to minimize all of those bad decisions and minimize those mistakes. But I can guarantee you that if you let a kid go hunting for probably the first time alone by themselves and they're too young, maybe they do take a shot that's not ideal. Like maybe they go out there with a bow and they take a quartering 2 shot pulling back 60 pounds and stuff like that. But
I guess I should have looked up the literature. If you have a youth permit and you're hunting with a youth tag, are you required? I think you're required to be hunting with an adult.
An adult.
No questions asked. I believe
so.
Even
until the age of 16.
Is it
right?
Because I'm pretty sure that in Illinois a youth permit is valid until you're 18. I'm almost certain of that. And again, mind you guys, I'm sorry we don't know this right off the top of our head. A, we should have done some homework, but B, we don't have kids, but I'm pretty sure it's 18. And to me, it's like, man.
A youth hunting and trapping license shall entitle a youth up to the age of 18 to hunt or trap while supervised by an adult who is 21 years of age or older with a valid Illinois hunting license and driver's license.
So right there, like in context.
So you have some consult.
Well, yeah, but I'm just going to say, like after, when I'm thinking like 15, 16 and up, I know a lot of kids in that age that hunt by themselves. So you're probably bending the law quite a bit right there. But even though in my mind, like if we trust you to go and drive a vehicle by yourself, like then I guess I have a little bit of a leap of faith that you can sit in a deer stand and make an accurate judgment by yourself.
It's like the same argument as like the military not being able to drink. If you're willing, if you're 18 years old and you're willing to go serve, protect, and die for our country, then you should be able to have a damn beer.
Right.
I agree. Like if you're going to operate a car, you should be able to.
But I guess, the flip side of that is I think the argument is that, well, they shouldn't be having a weapon and unsupervised. Come on, man. There's way more deaths vehicular manslaughter than there's going to be hunting accidents. I promise. I will. I'll guarantee you that every penny in my bank account right now that is true.
Yeah.
And it's like, so what I guess I'm getting at is that by definition, with the youth hunting permits, right, they're supposed to be accompanied by an adult. So realistically, that adult should be there to say, that is a bad shot, don't take it. This is a bad move, don't do it, X, Y, Z.
That's a good point.
Like you said, the adult is there to minimize the issues and the problems and the mistakes and the bad decisions. But they still happen, So getting back into to where we were.
Yep. So like I said, this bad decisions and bad things oftentimes would happen, especially when you're in that time frame. But I don't think that's necessarily a youth's fault. I do believe that truly there are some parents that are very passionate about hunting, and I'll admit, like when I have a kid and when you have a kid, I'm gonna get them that little plastic suction cuppy bow for like their second or third Christmas. I'm gonna do that. I would like them to share commonalities with me. That's what would make a bond like that so special, and that's why you and I are friends. That's why Cody and Homie are friends. Matt and Jesse, we all have this bond of hunting, and I'm assuming that would be magnified times 10 when it's your own kid.
Exactly.
You want to see them follow in that path. So I do think the danger is there that you force them into a situation that they're not ready for too quickly, and now we're going to get into that. So we'll start with the game. I think I know your and I's answers for this. I got a couple interesting takes on this when I was thinking about it earlier. What game do you think is the best way to introduce a kid? And we'll kind of go by region because I think I know what you're about to say, but what do you think? So what kind of hunt?
Yeah, I think my analysis of this, and so 12 would be like talking about some of the bigger games. And what do I mean is is there a couple reasons. I've been able to hunt with some young use, and then also some middle-aged use, and then some older use closer to that 18 range. So I've been fortunate enough to hunt with a spectrum age class of children.
Yeah, you've
kids.
Been taking kids out. You've taken a couple 10 and 11-year-olds.
The youngest I was with is 9.
Yeah, and then
This
a couple
little
at
girl.
like 13, 14, and then a couple right at the end there.
Yep.
At 15, 16.
And so it comes down to, I think, like I said, the mental toughness of a kid, and then also like the physical aspect. And I'll get into what I mean by that. To answer your question, I think that the best thing to start off a kid, like with coping and understanding the severity of harvesting a life, is literally birds, sparrows. Like, and it's because of me. I grew up on a farm, and it's like, I remember my first BB gun, and my dad and grandpa gave me the rules. Like, you can shoot sparrows and you can shoot starlings. No robins, no cardinal, XYZ. If we see you shoot one of them, it's taken away. And so it allows, I think, because it's a little bird, and it's cute and everything, right? But there's hundreds of them. I'm out there with a BB gun, and I'll never forget when I got that BB gun on Christmas. I went out and I sat on the porch, and there was a bush, one of those evergreen bushes, and there's, I don't know, like 20
loads of birds.
20 sparrows would fly in and out of there. It was about 10 feet away, and I sat on the porch, all bundled up. They'd fly in, I'd shoot one, it'd fall to the bottom, they'd fly out, I'd reload and wait. I probably murdered that whole clan of sparrows, and it was amazing. And I think it's better that way because it allows you to start off with something very small. If you miss, it's not a high stakes situation. You kind of, you walk before you run, because sparrows are considered rodents. I mean, they're an invasive species. And there's really, you don't see many people kind of, and this is bad, but you don't see many people like mourn or feel that kind of sense of deep, utter respect for killing like a sparrow. Same way if you caught a mouse in a trap, you don't have that sense of like remorse, like, man, I thank you for this opportunity kind of thing.
Yeah.
And from there, I think when the kid gets big enough and strong enough to be able to go from like a BB gun into the next realm of rimfire or small caliber 410 caliber shotguns, you can introduce them to small game. So rabbit and squirrels. That's when I first started to get into my development with firearms, because now you bridge that gap from a BB gun being, you respect it as a weapon, but it really, I mean, very unique circumstances, you can't hurt somebody severely with it. When you get into a 22 caliber or you get into a 410, now this is a weapon. There's some serious respect involved there. So on top of the hunting aspect, you evolve into honestly a safety and a respect system for the firearm. And I think in between that, there should be a lot of time spent plinking cans, shooting pumpkins, going through the process that the child or the kid knows the gun, understands how it operates, understands safety with, keeping your finger out of the trigger, understands literally the safety switch, how it's loaded, how it's unloaded, muzzle direction, like all these things need to be ground into their head before you go into the field. That's important and imperative, number one. So I think there's a time period there where, 6 to 10, that's when you start introducing them to those types of guns, so that they can, by the time they go into the field, it's been driven into their head. We're not going to leave one in the chamber when we're going to the blind, or we're going to the, this or that. We load it outside of the truck, or we load it when we get to the property. And these safety precautions or measures that I think everybody should take. And that's kind of stemming to that 12. I think when you get to that age, they're starting to understand and process and realize, all these factors. And now you add into it the kind of the high stake situation of a turkey or of a deer. And that's when the jitters get, right? I can tell you right now, when I shot my first squirrel, it's at this little piece of property called 10 acres with my grandpa, shooting a 410 Browning pump shotgun, and squirrel was up the tree. Cool story. We walked in, and it was, it was late summer, early fall. It was like right around September, because squirrel season opened up in August. And we're walking down the mowed path, and here's like a fawn or a small doe steps out and she's like 20 yards. Now my shotgun was loaded, and grandpa was like, okay, like, don't you shoot it, but pull it up real slow like you'd shoot it. And he's like, put the bead behind her shoulder. And he's like, are you on it? And I was like, yep. And he's like, good job, let down. Like, I remember that like it was yesterday. And so the deer run off, and we went out and we finally shot a squirrel. And it was the first thing that I had killed by myself that was bigger than a bird.
Bigger than a bird, yeah.
And I remember he's like, okay, go pick it up. And that was like, to me, the real thing. Like, I had to go get it. I'd been with him and my dad and shot rabbits and squirrels. I've sat with my dad when he shot deer, but I was never the one to really go grab it right afterwards. You know, I would poke it and play with the deer and all that stuff, but it was like, holy smoke. So I remember like really like picking it up, kind of like the one, he's like, what are you doing? He's like, grab it. I'm like, I was like, can I? He's like, yeah, he stoned it, you know, pick it up. And so like, I'll never forget that moment, like the realization, like it was warm, you know, it was just dead, and you grab it and it kind of hits you, that sense like, oh, I did it. And we filled our limit that day. And by the end of the hunt, I was just grabbing them, you know, picking them up and excited. But it's kind of funny how timid I was at first. And then an hour later, it was like second nature. You know, it's a big, big impact for me.
Sure.
That little squirrel hunt with the 410.
Yeah, I would say so.
So when did you start? Like, what was the first thing you killed?
The first hunt I went on, I was 10 years old, and my Uncle Ty kind of buffaloed me. He explained to me like this when we were going deer hunting. He said, hey, you know, the lower the number it is, the less it kicks. And I didn't know. So I'm like, you know, thinking about there's a 20 gauge and a 16 gauge and a 12 gauge. And so he hands me this 12 gauge and he's like, aim it right there at that dirt and pull the trigger. And that scared the shit out of me.
And so like I would
so he scared me pretty good with that. But
I've
been shooting like smaller,
yeah,
you know, smaller guns before then. So I also had a BB gun and was plinking robins and things like that. But my answer to this question, it kind of feels like a cop-out answer, but the one thing that I want to do and hopefully have happen for me when I'm raising a kid potentially to hunt, if that's what they want to do and show an interest in, I don't want to create a trigger man. You know, when I say trigger man, I'm talking about a person that shows up and everything's ready and they squeeze the trigger and then they take their picture with the deer and then it's over. You know, I know some 20, 30, 40, 50, and 60-year-old trigger men that are still trigger men, and that's all that they do. And I would like to create the link between food and appreciating what you kill and things that you do kill. So actually, my game, air quote, the game that I would choose a fish. So a kid.
Oh, fishing, yeah, but fishing is that, yeah, fishing is automatic. Like as soon as that kid can hold a freaking.
I know, but I'm saying like it's a graphic ordeal, you know, to somebody that hasn't seen it before, like to a 6 to 13-year-old kid that hasn't seen a bluegill be filleted before. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a graphic thing you could imagine. And so I would like to kind of get them into that first and understanding, you know, we're going to eat this and appreciate this, and this does have a value. Mm-hmm. So that way they, you know, grow to appreciate what resources we're taking, because ultimately we're harvesting something from the outdoors and bringing it back. There is a limited supply of resources. We can't just take however much we want. So I want to create that link between food and appreciating what you kill first. So I think the first thing that I would do before I even had them kill anything with a gun maybe would be help me fillet some fish.
Oh yeah. Automatic.
And then after that, I liked what you said about rabbits and squirrels, just because they're, you know, especially a rabbit, they're pretty readily available in any country setting all over the Midwest.
Mm-hmm. All over the nation.
Yeah. And it's a small gun to be able to, you know, get in a kid's hands and things like that. And I think, just like what you said, I think a good option is getting that BB gun and, you know, plinking a few sparrows or birds or whatever mm-hmm. off of some fence posts, etc., to get, you know, kind of see how they react and kind of see, are they remorseful? Did they cry? What was their reaction like when they actually took a life and realized that it wasn't coming back? So that sparrow falls off the post, and what's going to happen now, to kind of bridge that and have them see that, because, you know, up until that point, A kid may not really understand death unless they've been to a funeral or two and realize that, grandpa or grandma or great-grandpa, great-grandma isn't coming back. They may not have any concept of death.
Well, even then, I think the big thing with small game is that you have way less of an opportunity for a bad situation. And what do I mean by a bad situation?
Yes.
If I shoot a squirrel with a 22 and it's a bad shot, like it's a bad shot, a 22 going through a turtle
in the back ham, quote, as funny as it is to say that
a 22 going through a squirrel is like the equivalent of like a 3-inch PVC bar going through it. Mm-hmm. Like you're gonna kill the squirrel. Very rarely does a squirrel get away from you. Or same thing with a 410, same thing with a rabbit.
Mm-hmm.
But me and you both know, you make a bad shot on a turkey or a bad shot on a deer, your chances of recovering that are pretty slim. There's an opportunity there, but it's not. So it allows you to kind of build some confidence with the children or the kids then, right? Like opportunity to harvest rate is going to be a much higher number.
Mm-hmm.
And they're also not going to have that burden of missing, that burden of maybe not recovering the squirrel, right? But I think the other thing that's important is it really teaches a lot of fundamentals with firearms about being able to pull it up and just get your sights quickly. I started off, everything I did was 22 or beads, iron sights or bead sights. My dad never let me shot with a scope until I got a little bit older. I remember it was kind of like that knighthood, right? Because my dad had his 1022 with a scope on it, and if the squirrel was too far away, he would shoot it. And it was like, man, I can't wait till I can shoot a scope, because I got iron sights. But it really taught me like, okay, here's how you shoulder the gun. Here's how you don't pull the trigger. You don't punch the trigger. Here's how you pick up the sights. And on the shotgun, now it's becoming second nature to pull the gun up to my shoulder. And when you kick up a rabbit, you got to shoot it on the run. And it teaches you a lot of really, really good instinctive firearm properties young. So that way, when you get thrown into the big stuff, those little muscle mechanics are second nature.
Yep.
Pulling up the gun or getting into the sights and all that stuff, like easing your finger off the side of the trigger guard down into the trigger. Like it's now been ingrained through muscle memory of shooting hundreds of birds with a BB gun and dozens of squirrels and dozens of rabbits. And now those kinks kind of have already been worked out,
mm-hmm. because
now you're already in a high stress situation because this Tom's been strutting out in the field at 100 yards and he finally broke to the decoys, or this deer just popped out and like it's high stakes situation.
Yep.
Dad just stopped the deer, So I think getting back to it, those younger years, that's where you teach them safety, firearm etiquette, animal respect, and you're breaking them into these processes, but you're not kind of putting them right in the fire. I also think, though, that in those years, it's important to develop kind of the understanding of it. I think I'm a huge advocate when the kids are young and they do enjoy hunting, take them with you. They can enjoy that experience with you. They should.
Mm-hmm.
Like before a kid goes out to hunt a deer or a turkey, they should sit in the blind or sit in a stand with you while you do it and see the action and watch how it happens.
Minimally, just as an aptitude test, like
mm-hmm.
those little bubble out tests that you fill out at the end of a test or something, like when you're in school. What would you like to be when you grow up? Just seeing if that's something you'd be interested in. That's your aptitude test as a young hunter, is going with dad. If you're bored and you don't like it and you don't like being cold, you don't like the act of it, then there's a good indicator on whether or not your kid is going to enjoy it. Right. Assuming they will, because you enjoy it and your kid loves you and they want to be around you as
mm-hmm.
much as they can, probably they're going to enjoy it. But at any rate, you're going to get them a good taste of, all right, here's what you're getting into by going down this rabbit hole with me.
Right. And you don't have to take them every time. Just get them exposed to it.
Yeah.
And hopefully expose them with a little bit of success, and let them see the why you do it.
Perfect example. The other day, Cody posted on Whitetail Legacy's Instagram page, the Bud Light, or I forget the name of the deer. He thought it was Bud Light or something like that. Mm-hmm. And his kid was with him when he shot it, and that kid is going to remember that forever.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a great example of that. And talk about a great outcome. Not only did you kill a deer, you killed a buck with your kid.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. So I wanted to bring up something else I looked up because I was interested. I've seen this diagram in many, many places before. I'll show you it right now, and then we can kind of go through it here. This diagram, I went to basspro.com, and this is called the 5 stages of hunting diagram. So it's interesting, and think about what stage you're in. So what we've been talking about for the beginning of this podcast is stage 1. It's called the shooter stage. And this shooter stage says hunters at this stage simply want to do a lot of shooting, be it doves, ducks, squirrels, rabbits, or even deer. They want to test their shooting abilities as well as that of their rifle and shotgun. These hunters are beginners and often as young as well. So that's kind of the stage that we've been talking about. Just get a gun in their hand, get going through the motions of knowing a weapon, respecting a weapon, understanding what it means to take a life, etc.
Having fun,
having fun.
It's not, you're able to talk and to kind
not
of
as
laugh.
Serious. Yep.
Yes. Yep.
And then we have stage number 2, the limiting out stage. So the shooter stage, going back, somebody that's in the shooter stage right now to me is Maverick. Maverick loves everything that Matt buys him. Matt just bought him a little 410 the other day. Maverick's got a little suction cup crossbow that he'll go and shoot deer heads in the living room with, and he's got a bunch of stuff like that. He's got little bow and arrow, and Maverick just loves shooting stuff and always asks me whenever I go down there and I'm hanging out with Jesse and Maverick and Matt, Grant, let's go hunting, and we'll go sit in his little pop-up blind in the middle of the living room and we'll shoot at stuff. So he's in the shooter stage. The limiting out stage, that's the next stage. That's stage number 2. And this one says, eventually simply burning through a lot of ammunition is no longer sufficient. Hunters at this stage still gain a lot of satisfaction from shooting, but now the number of birds and animals bagged becomes important too, and limiting out or filling a tag is the gold standard.
Yep.
So
I call that like the bloodlust stage.
The bloodlust stage.
Like where me and you started bow hunting, and
if
it was
it's
like,
brown, it's down stage.
We're taking every opportunity we can.
That deer is inside of 20 yards. Yep,
Yeah.
It might be a button buck, but that's okay. Time to punch a tag. Punch it.
Yep.
So that's the limiting out stage. Somebody that was on that stage, we had a buddy, about 5 years ago. This person has since, I think, graduated out of this stage. But we had a buddy who we know quite well, and he's just like thinking about like when he was taking his son hunting, and he's like, oh, boop, there went another shot. And his kid would be that kid that was bucked out by October 15th or October 20th every year, just because the first 2 bucks that came by, they were dead. So that's the limiting out stage. Stage 3 is the trophy stage, and I think the word trophy hunter, I know that Matt and I have talked about this before. When people talk about trophy hunter, it kind of gets a bad, it's not a good, it doesn't roll off the tongue well.
Yeah, it's a word that works though, and then I think what you're talking about is like a goal, like a goal hunter.
Yes,
you're going out with a mindset that I want to shoot I'm setting a bar here,
yes,
and that's what I'm going for. So trophy is an easy way to encompass it, but realistically, it's like
a trophy is a bad way to say goal in this case. But this stage says eventually the weight of the game bag becomes less important, and the emphasis shifts from quantity to quality. Hunters at this stage gain satisfaction from being selective and taking game, such as duck hunter who shoots only greenheads, a turkey hunter who shoots only longbeards, or a deer hunter who shoots only mature bucks. These hunters often travel long distances to hunt trophy animals. So I'm not afraid to say that. That's probably the stage that I'm in, with a mix of the couple things that we're about to talk about.
Yeah, you set the bar, and that's what you want to hit. It can be a caliber of animal, but I think that was well said.
Yeah,
how that was written.
Absolutely. Number 4, the method stage. Somebody who I believe is in the method stage, I'll go over in a little bit, but this one says, for this hunter, taking game is still important, but how the game is taking important takes true precedence. True satisfaction comes from the method used to take the game, which particular emphasis on more challenging methods such as archery or muzzleloading. This hunter will spend a lot of time scouting and use trail cameras, studying their quarry, and practicing hunting skills such as calling, and in the case of deer hunter, even may choose to target one specific animal. So somebody in the method stage, somebody that's like, I'm going to take this up a notch, I'm going to, I've done, I've compound bow hunted for 15 years. Now I want to try it with a recurve. Like, I think Garrett Fike is currently in that stage. He's killed a lot of big deer with his compound. Now he's trying with his recurve, and he killed a giant with his recurve this year.
Same guy like Austin Chandler.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like he's at a stage now. He's
the method stage. Where he's like, man, I've killed so much. I've killed so many big deer, so many turkeys. Now I'm going to try to do it with a recurve. Which is freaking really cool. So the challenge is being set, the bar is being raised, the ante is being upped. Finally, the 5th stage. And I think that we have a little bit mix, especially you, of the 5th stage here. After many years in the field, which, prefacing, many is subjective. Garrett and I are both about 30. To a 60 or 70-year-old, we don't have many years of experience. But to a 20-year-old, Yeah, you could say many. It just kind of depends on where you sit. But I'm getting to that point because of what it says in here. And it says, after many years in the field, the hunter begins to place the emphasis on the total hunting experience. After being in the outdoors, enjoying the company of friends and family, and seeking nature in all of its beauty, they now outweigh the need for taking game. These hunters often turn to mentoring other younger hunters for ultimate satisfaction. And so you've taken, I mean, how many air quote first turkeys have you killed with people? How many air quote first deer with a certain caliber, first animal with a certain weapon? You've been there for a lot of firsts, which is why I said I would pick you as my example for this stage, or just that grandpa feel. So Pat Partlow, our father-in-law, I think he is in the sportsman stage. When he and Michaela go hunting, he always takes the back seat for her, and he's just out there having a good time. He's very tranquil, just soaking it all in and really enjoying it. So I would put Pat and you as my picks for somebody that I know that it's in the sportsman stage. So I just wanted to bring this up because it ties in really well with what we're talking about, because we're talking about the shooting stage, and I thought it would be prevalent to the topic. So the next thing, what do you think the first thing is? And we've talked about it a little more, but you can change your answer. What do you think the first thing is an outdoors man or woman should teach their kid? What's that like first rudimentary skill?
Skill? So teaching
skill or idea.
Yeah, so I think with skills, you can't harvest an animal without a weapon. And I think going back to what I had started with is that it's really important that you respect the weapon and you understand the situation that you're in. So you respect that this can hurt not only the animal I'm hunting, but people as well. I think that's super important. Like I have my own beliefs on like firearm training, if you will, with children. And I really am a big believer that you got to kill that curiosity at a super young age, because it's like anything. Even if you're an adult, if you can't have it, well, you want it, right? So I just know that
I think it's good too to kind of tear down the fence, especially in society, which is a whole nother rabbit hole right now. Yeah. Guns are seen as being big and scary. And if you can show a kid, yes, the outcomes of this can be scary, but if you use it right, this is not scary at all.
Yep. So I'm like, this is Dad's gun. You cannot use it unless I'm here. But here, come over here. I'll show you how it works. Let's take it apart and clean it. This is how you load, because now you've killed the curiosity. He doesn't want to try to find the key to get in the gun safe to look at this majestic thing that I'm not supposed to touch.
Sure.
Right? Like you set the ground rules. This is Dad's. You cannot use it. Period. The end without me. You can, anytime you want to shoot it, you come and get me and we'll do it. I promise you I won't let you not.
Yep.
But you can't do it without me. You set the ground rules. I think that's super important. And then again, getting into the situation, I think the next thing that's important to teach them is understanding what you were talking about is that hunting is hunting and that it's not killing. And that's very difficult. This is a very fine line, I feel like, because when you expose your kids to hunting, you want to give them good results. You
Absolutely.
want them to have a good experience. Because if I were to take a kid out and we were to get our asses froze out in November, December, not see anything, and we were cold, we got wet or whatever, like that's really hard to get them motivated to go again. But the flip side of that is that every single time if you take your kid out and he's conditioned that, this is a 30-minute, turkey hunting is a 30-minute ordeal. Dad gets the decoys ready, Dad gets everything ready, and this or Grandpa does or whatever, and it's great. And I go out, and then he does a little bit of scratching on that plate thing, and then all of a sudden here comes one, and I shoot it. You got to really kind of feel out the situation, because again, like I said, you want to give them a good experience, a wholesome experience of the outdoors, but not a spoon-fed one.
Yeah, that shooter versus hunter kind of thing. You don't want to lay it up there for them on a silver platter every time. A couple times, yeah, that's totally fine.
Yes.
But you don't want to generate a shooter. You want to generate a hunter.
Especially when it comes to deer hunting, I think this is very sensitive topic. And I'm a big believer that when you get your kids, and I'm talking about deer or bigger game, you want them to go through the progression of those stages that you're talking about, where they're excited to see deer. They're excited to shoot any deer. Like I don't, and I will not you've asked me questions about this before. It's a kid's first time going hunting. Let's say it's gun season. We both got tags, and the deer that I've been hunting, for however long,
2 or 3 years, 4 years,
big ass buck comes out.
Mm-hmm.
I am not going to let that kid shoot it. 2 reasons. A, I believe that I've worked hard to get it, and I know how much it's going to mean to me. And B, as soon as I let that kid take a shot, now that's the first deer that they've ever had, or the first buck. That kind of sets this is what happens now, right? And then the third thing is that you have a very, very intense situation, high stakes situation, and the opportunity for error on that first, second, third harvest is extremely high. Mm-hmm. Like, you don't tell me that as a parent, you would not have regret if this huge deer or this mature deer, this nice deer comes out that you would be happy to harvest, and your kid makes a poor shot, because right there and there at that time, the situation is bigger than the child's experience, right? Like,
yes.
You and the kid would both have a ton of regret, admittedly or not, because now you've turned what could be a great experience. If you would have shot that deer, your kid would be just probably as ecstatic as you would, right? Because he got to be there when dad shot the big one, yes. Right? And you have the happy ending. But kid takes a shot. He's jacked up on more adrenaline than you are, because the situation is...
It goes wrong.
It goes wrong. You don't recover the deer. Now...
Heartbreak.
Big stain on that situation. That memory goes from a 10 to a 2, and you can't take that back. So getting into it, what I'm saying is, that question of what I want to teach them is safety and respect, and then the progression of hunting. I don't want them to kind of skip over the shooter stage and the bag limit stage you were talking about,
and go to the stage 3.
Go right to the trophy stage, because man, those are some of the best years of hunting.
Yeah,
like when a Jake comes into the decoys, boom, smoke him, man. I'm going to be jacked up for you. I want you to be happy and excited. You made an awesome shot. It was clean. It was quick. You did everything right. You shoot a couple of those. All right, son, now let's start waiting for toms. Or, you got a couple basket racks. Okay, let's wait for one a little bit bigger now. They're out there. I promise you they're out there. We got to be patient.
Yep.
And you start kind of taking them through the progression, because I think once a hunter, whatever the age is, after they've gone through those steps and gets kind of to that trophy stage where they're setting the bar, and I'm saying trophy, we talked about, but like now they're setting goals. Like, I've shot an 8-pointer, Dad. I really want to shoot a 10-pointer. That's awesome. Let's do it.
Yep.
Not a 150-inch 10-pointer. It's a 10-pointer.
Yeah.
Let's do this. Let's set the bar. Go get it.
Yep.
And once they get to there, you can kind of let them take their own path then.
Sure. Okay. Well said on that response. I totally agree with you about that. Respect of a firearm, definitely, because most more times than not, I would imagine about 99 kids out of 100, their first animal that they take is most likely going to be with some sort of firearm or something that they pull a trigger on. So what do you think is, and we're talking about time now, shifting gears, what do you think is the right amount of time to take a kid out for, and why? I have a little bit of research, from some educational perspectives, and they say, that a child's brain in between the ages of 6 and about 15 years old, so realistically from kindergarten to high school, you want to change up your activity that you're doing about every 20 minutes. Wow. Just because a kid can get bored really quickly.
Right.
And you've been to trainings before. Everybody that's listening out there before, if you went to like an OSHA conference or your boss has sent you to like a safety thing, I mean, after 3 or 4 hours of that person being up there lecturing, like even an adult is checked out. So my question for you is, when and how long is the right amount of time to take your kid out? You touched on it a little bit earlier. You don't like my kid's first hunt is not going to be like, hey, you go sit in that blind for 7 hours, and me and Uncle Garrett are going to be right up there in that tree, and it's raining and windy sideways right now, and it's November 4th and it's 19 degrees out. That's not going to be the first time. It's most likely going to be in a ground blind, someplace that's insulated, because the little kids are tiny, they get cold, and things like that. But what do you think's the right amount of time, and when do you think you should initiate that first air quote hunt?
Okay, so I think we're gotten to a point where we've established the child's he's hunting the big game, right? He's in that stage where we're talking turkeys and deer now.
Turkeys and deer, yep.
I would say that I would shy away more so to expose them to morning hunts right away. You have the factor of getting up early, which, again, for kids, this is quite a bit earlier than normal. So you have the grogginess, kind of those gears to turn. And I think I would take them out in the afternoon. I think as a rule of thumb, in most cases, you see more wildlife, right? Especially in the last hour of the day. It's also not going to be as cold when you're talking about deer hunting. It's typically almost always warmer in the afternoon. And then you have a rigid end, right, when it gets dark. So it kind of lets the kid know without telling him, like, we'll be done at, we hunt till dark, and we'll get them done. So they start, it's warmer. They're more awake. They're probably a little more active and lively.
They can see what's going on. Like, that's a big thing, for a kid who's, 6 to 15 years old, like, just being able to physically, like, okay, we're walking in here, and hopefully they've been with you to the location you're going to. They've been to the blind. They've helped you carry equipment out there, set it up, etc. But that visual thing, like, I would imagine that it would be quite cumbersome trying to take Maverick out right now. Being as little as he is and as young as he is through, some of the walks that we make are over creeks, and, we got to maybe jump
500-600
or
yards,
walk through a creek or up a big hill, etc. So that's a factor, but keep going.
So I think that's something maybe to consider. I'm not saying don't take your kids out hunting in the morning. I'm just talking about introducing them to it. And I'm talking even before hunting with them. I think that's a great way to kind of expose those younger kids in there. Now, with turkey hunting, it's a little bit of the opposite because there's a ton of really cool action, especially if you can get close to birds in the morning. And yes, it'll be early, but I think there's a lot of benefit there. On top of the fact you can't hunt turkeys in the afternoon in Illinois. But I think it's important to remember that when you do take a youth out, you can't pick up and probably run and gun. You can't go shake and bake. And I would also say that I think that when you're talking about these younger kids, 6 to 11 years old in my mind, you're trying to expose them to your love, kind of give them in the morning that thing to look forward to. I remember that when we used to go hunting with my grandpa, always, we didn't sit very long, just the way it was. About 9 o'clock, we'd drive back to the farm, and my grandma would always have like this big spread, it was a treat. So you don't have to have your wife cook you a huge breakfast buffet, but maybe it's like every time after Dad and I go hunting, we always go and get a Casey's donut, or every time after Dad and I go hunting, we always go and get a soda. Just something that's kind of
like a little Pavlov's dogs, classically conditioning your kid, like, when we go hunting, something good happens. Or we always do this thing. Okay.
And I think it could be a cool thing that you start with your kid, but also just, again, a little positive reinforcement, because if you start exposing your kids not hunting, but taking them hunting, you're always not going to kill every time you take them out, and you're always not going to have an awesome hunt where you see 15 deer or whatever, but they have that little cherry on top to that we're going to go, like, we're going to go grab the donut, we're going to go grab a soda, we're going to go do this. So getting into hunting wise, I think when the kid is hunting and now you're taking him hunting for the first time of day doesn't matter. It's opportunity, right? If you think you've got the best chance to get your kid in front of the animal that you're going to target, and it's in the morning, then take him in the morning. If it's in the afternoon, then take him in the afternoon, and put him in a spot, in a position, and in a time where you're going to have a good experience when you're hunting. When you're exposing him, other things to consider. When you're taking him hunting, I personally believe you go when you can get it done.
That's a good answer. So talking about the time, hypothetically, we're talking about the afternoon here. So we're talking about like 3.5 hours kind of cap, most days during the hunting season, especially after the time change happens here in Illinois. You and I will go out at about 1:30. We'll get to our blind at 1:45. We'll sit till dark, which is about 5, which is a little over 3 hours. So that's probably pretty manageable for a kid. I know that some parents, they'll pack a Game Boy or something if your kid is really, really, really young, which we're going to get into that here in just a little bit, how young is too young. But I like what you said about that. So it's time for one of our bigger questions here. What is the backlash of taking a kid out too early? What are some of the downsides? We've kind of already hinted at one or two of them, but there are many, many more.
So I am, and again, after taking some young kids out, they're not ready for it. And that's why I said it's hard to put a number on it. But the kids that I have taken, and this is no fault necessarily to the parent or the child, it's just the situation, I think. And this was difficult because the people that I've been able to help, the parents were there, these younger kids they came with, and they were just so excited to get them out, so excited. And they were both turkey hunting, both times.
And the parents should be, they've waited for how many years for this kid to hit this age, right? Yeah.
And so the first issue is that the youth that I took out was uncomfortable, was scared to shoot a shotgun. She had shot some smaller stuff, but she just could not shoot a 20 gauge. She wouldn't shoot it. So we hunted with a crossbow, which kill zone on a turkey with archery equipment is extremely small. It's a hard kill zone to hit even as an experienced archer, right? So we went out with a weapon that's not as effective and as efficient as a shotgun. And so I think there should have been kind of a precursor that we should probably
not
think about, waiting a year. And then also when we got out there, she understood it, but this was the first time she'd really been hunting. She hadn't gone through that exposure process, like I had said. And I think and it's because of the age, like there's only a certain couple of years, that you can get those kids in BB guns and 22s. And I think that time frame that we were out is those years that I was referring to. So we get out and I set the decoys up and the birds are going freaking nuts. This is awesome. We're sitting in a ground blind, a pop-up, and she had her own little stool, which was kind of in front of her dad, and I'm off to the side and calling, and here I see the tom come out of the timber, and I'm shifted so I can just see down the timber a little bit, and I'm like, oh, here he comes, and big old beautiful tom. And I mean, he puts on a show. He's as tight as a snare drum, strutted out, marches right down the timber edge, and he just decoys were set at about 20 yards, and he locked up at about 26. He didn't come right into him, but right outside of him. And he was just going left and right. I mean, just like a soldier on a march, man. He'd take about 10 steps, spin back around, and
come right back. Yep.
And
showing off.
So obviously, within killable distance, and he's talking to her, and my job there was to call and get the situation. That's it. I'm removed now. Dad, you do your thing.
Yeah.
And so she's struggling now, and she'd shot the crossbow. I watched her, and I practiced with her and made sure she could shoot good. And she was, holding like a 3-inch group, no problem at like 20 and 30 yards with the crossbow. But when time came, I think she was really used to, there's the target, the crossbow's on, arrest, and you look through it, and the sight or the target's in the scope already. It had a scope on it. She was struggling. She could not find the turkey in the scope, and she's really amped up. And now she started to cry, and she's like, "I'm scared. I can't see this through the scope. I think the scope is broke." She's in a situation like I was telling you about, like fundamentally, like being able to just pull up a gun and look through it and see through the scope. Pull up a gun and look through it and instinctively kind of, not be dead nuts bullseye, but be on your target. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
So the situation, and the turkey, he didn't know what the hell's going on. He didn't even know we were messing around in there. He's out there for like 10 minutes, and he's working with her daughter, and finally she's like, okay, I can see, and so she gets him in the scope, and now the bird's still moving, strutting, and like I said, maybe 15 feet it's walking. And so I'm like, all right, Eddie, I'm gonna try to stop it. I'm gonna try to get it to stand still for you. And so I cut a little bit, and it sticks his head up, and this bird did not want to break out of strut, so it stayed in strut. And then finally I did just like a little putt, right? And the bird stopped, and perfectly big broadside, and I'm talking to her like, shoot right in the middle, aim for right in the center. And she shot, and I mean, it was good left and right, but it was high, so she just took the plumage of back feathers out.
Sure.
And bird was fine. We had about
little handful of feathers.
And that was that. And it was nothing like, she was bummed or whatever, but immediately after she shot it, it was immediate. Like, she's like, did I get him? And I was like, I'm sorry, honey, you didn't. And she's like, I want to go home now. And there's other turkeys gobbling, right? Like we probably could have stayed there. And this happened right off the roost, that 30-minute hunt.
Yep.
We probably could have got another one to come in, but she just, it was a bad experience.
Damage had been done.
And
didn't
that's where,
stay. Yep.
That's where I think you can, if you introduce them too early, this is a scenario that you have a higher opportunity to produce. And so now, like, it's been several years now and she hasn't gone back out, and I don't know. She has deer hunted with her dad and she did kill a deer, a couple years later. But it's like, she has not gone turkey hunting again. And I don't know. I don't want to say that it was because of that, but come on, that's a pretty bad experience, and I really think you should try to avoid that, even though it's going to be painstaking and you want to get your kids out and you want to like hug them and take pictures and be like, you're such a badass.
I'm so proud of you.
Yes, you want that. I don't know it, but I can understand where a parent would want that feeling.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as early as possible. Because like you said, I've been dead. Can't wait to be a dad. And it's been 9 years in the works, I just try your best to understand the situation. Because I feel like had she been a little bit older and definitely had she been able to shoot a shotgun, that bird would have been mopped, man. You think about it, a 20 gauge, low recoil turkey load,
at 26 yards, throwing about a 1 foot pattern.
Yeah, man. Boom, you just jelly-headed that thing. So similar experience with a young boy that I took out, the same type of concept. He shot a gun though, and again, you could just tell he was not comfortable, and we had another bad hunt. And it just maybe it's my experience with those ewes. We had good hunts by all intensive purposes of birds coming in, just
not good finishes.
Yeah. So and that's up to the parent to decide, and understand the level of experience your child has and if they're ready for it. So that's a long-winded answer, but I think when you take them out too young, you have a higher opportunity for a bad experience.
And as hard as it is to believe, like, was it the kid's fault they couldn't see through the scope? Debatable, but more so it's kind of the parents' fault for taking that kid out too early. As funny as it is to say, it's kind of like a paradoxical situation in which the kid's the one that's not, air quote, doing the job, but the parent was the one that, put him into game 7 of the finals with the last 3 seconds left, and you've got to hit 2 free throws to win the game kind of scenario, and the kid's just not ready for it. So I would say that more so it's on the parent than the kid engaging, when that time is going to be. And like you said, I don't feel like there's a hard and fast answer for like 14. No one should go out before they're 14.
No,
period. The end.
Right.
There's not that. It's kind of all depends. Like Maverick, Maverick's going to turn 4 this year, and Matt's already bought him a 410, and Maverick has been out hunting a lot of times with Matt, with John, with Stacy. And I would assume that,
but I think it's important to put that in context. So, like,
air quote hunting. Yep, he's been sitting
on
and
a hard
watching
line
deer.
that's heated, and and he's got a 410, but he can't shoot it yet.
Right, and but I would expect a kid like that to be a little bit ahead of the curve, more so because he has went and spent instead of all right, kid, we're gonna go hunting, air quote, watching deer today from a hard-sided blind. Instead of doing that when a kid is like 9 or 10. And getting them into it at that age, Maverick's going at like 3, 4. So I just think his curve is going to be faster than somebody that's like 5 years behind.
Yes.
Which is another reason as to why, I guess a benefit air quote benefit. Now, when I'm thinking of, the number of big deer that Matt has killed comparatively to you and me, Matt started hunting earlier. Matt put his first Pope and Young on the wall earlier, and it's most likely because John took him earlier than you and I had went hunting. So I do think there's a big benefit in that, getting that kid to the stage in which they're proficient killer faster, the younger that you can take them. But like you said, I think there's definitely some harmful probability that could potentially come out of it if they're not ready for it. And like we talked about Maverick, like he's not going to go pull a trigger anytime soon, but he's understanding, all right, we got to be quiet when we're walking in. All right, we got to be quiet when we're in the blind. We can't move too fast. Things like that. Like he's learning all those little skills slowly but surely. Another downside, like I was talking about, is I don't want to create a shooter. Like somebody that's like, all right, Uncle Garrett and we've spent about 40 hours making food plots on this farm. All the edges are feathered. They're going to come out of this path because we want them to. Here's the cell camera pictures for the last 4 days of this deer that we want to kill coming out. Now here you go. All you need to do is sit your gun on this rest and boom, crack them down. And that's it. Yeehaw. I see a lot of people, and it more so happens like on Facebook when I'm scrolling through there during shotgun season, where I'm like, all right, you haven't made one post about hunting since last hunting season, but now all of a sudden here you are with this deer that you killed. I mean, do you really like this, or is this just a little weekend thing for when where you want to show off that you're an air quote country kid?
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying.
I don't want to
create
a huge
that
spectrum of.
I don't want to create
hunters,
that.
but no. So I think though is like when you're getting into talking about a deer or a kid, a youth that's now evolved into what I call setting the bar stage, not trophy stage. I think at that point now, they understand the process and they should be interested in the process. When you get from the shooting stage and then get out of the bloodlust bag limit stage and you transition into setting a goal, I feel like the progression of the hunter should evolve as well. Like not only is your goals as far as what you want to kill or shoot change, like to set your bar at a certain level takes more involvement. So maybe they're not spending as much time as like the further stages that we talked about, the method stage and the sportsman stage, but they're on their way. He's hanging his own stands now. He's shooting his bow unprompted now. Once you get to a point, he or she is like, I'm ready to shoot a buck. I'm ready to shoot a bigger deer.
And I think that ties in really, really well with what you're talking about earlier. Like you want to set them up for a high percentage chance because when that high percentage chance comes and they experience the rush that we feel and the success that we feel, then by default, they're going to be like, hook, line, and sinker. I'm hooked.
I want
Dad, what are we doing today? Right. Dad, what are we doing this weekend? Dad, come on, get up. Let's go do this. And you're like, no, we can't play in food plots today, son. It's February.
Right.
Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You've created that air quote monster that, we've become in like this passion around it. And I feel like you said, it's your option and it's your obligation as a parent to make sure that the scenario in which like the first kill happens, that it's the right or as good as you can make it, like mistakes can happen. Like, if our kid's hunting with us and they're about 10, 12, 13 years old and outsteps this first doe, and she's 50 yards, 60 yards away and we've got a gun, it's a 20 gauge with a nice scope on it and it's dead nuts. Like it's bullet holes are touching at 50 kind of sighted in, very, very well sighted in, and they're rested and the doe has no idea. I mean, I'm saying mistakes can still happen.
Absolutely.
But you want to put a kid in a scenario in which
to eliminate as many of those.
The lowest.
Yeah.
Put them in. Keep as many variables as you can control in your control, so that way they can reap the benefit of experiencing success and getting them off to the right start and not putting a bad taste in their mouth off the get-go.
So I guess my big spiel, if I was going to give it an encompassing kind of feel, is I think you should look at your child's development in the outdoors the same way as you would with like any type of athletic or developmental thing, come art or music. You need to have a tiered stair-step approach and allow them to build confidence for the situations that they're in. Similar to the analogy you talked about, your kid's at the age of flag football. That doesn't mean he likes football, but that doesn't mean he goes and plays in varsity. he's going to have a really bad experience when you take a 12-year-old and go have him play with high schoolers, and same thing with like art, your kid is good at drawing, but he's not going to be able to keep up with somebody that's very skilled with a brush or a pen. And so I think if you build them up and you instill that confidence, just like what you're talking about, with a gun, in my mind, I feel like when my child is ready, and again, this is all hypothesis here. We don't have any. I'm going to have my kid being able to shoot a dinger at 100 yards, but his cap is going to be 50. You can shoot it at 100 yards and hit that 8-inch gong every time. You're confident. Well, but for your first time, we're going to keep them within a certain range.
Just like us with our bows, you and I, we both shoot our bows out to 70 and 80 yards, but we're not going to shoot deer out to 70 and 80 yards. We're going to shoot deer out to like 40, 45, 50 tops, you know. We practice those long distance so that way the longer distance and the reasonable kill distance are easier for us.
And I think that's also like, again, I'm a huge firearm lover and advocate, and you've seen those videos, similar to the situation like your Uncle Ty did to you, like, and this is my opinion, I don't think that's a good idea.
No, in retrospect, probably not.
You've seen those videos where you got a kid that's like got a shotgun that he can't even hold upright, and come on, shoot it, Jimmy. He shoots and the gun goes flying. He goes toppled over and everybody laughs, but the kid's like shell shocked all shit. Like, do you think that kid wants to shoot that gun again?
Probably not.
No way. Like that is, I believe that is the exact opposite thing that you should do. You should, it's already allowed. It's a big experience. Like, we've taken adults out that have never shot guns, and like they're like, whoa,
the power. Yeah, I didn't realize. Yeah.
So like, you should definitely, proper stance. If the kid cannot handle that weapon, they should not be shooting it. The end. And I mean, there are limitations and restrictions for what you can use for firearms and with any species that you hunt. And like, if your kid is not adequate and ready and able to handle that gun, they can't go hunting.
For failure.
Correct. And so like getting into weaponry, there's something, I don't know if you have on the script or not, but one of the paradoxes that I struggle to put my head around with hunting is that those ages, specifically from like 12, I'm going to say about to 16, is a time where you can start getting your kid involved in hunting, archery, where they use a crossbow. But at what point do you condition your kid to crossbow hunt and not archery hunt? Now, I'm opinionated about this, and I have no qualms with people who want to crossbow hunt, but I do not want my kid to not want a compound bow hunt because he's had so much success with a crossbow. You start them off with a crossbow, they can hunt all archery season.
That's a good point.
They've had all the success with a crossbow. Dad, why do I have to use something that's harder? Right? And I have to get stronger and so on and so forth, because kids, like I said, depending on development from 12 to 16, probably aren't strong enough, definitely in some of those years, to be able to pull back the adequate amount to bow hunt.
40, 50, 60, 70, yep.
Yeah, so it's like, but how as a parent, as a mentor, do you tell them like, okay, it's time to make the switch, Because, and this is something that I'm speaking out of context here, because when I grew up, like I only had a compound bow. Crossbows were like non-existent when we started hunting. I mean, it was only older people used them. Yep. And so for me to not to kind of go through that process, because now more, I mean, crossbows have come a long way in 15 years. Long way.
Yeah, you could give a 12-year-old a bench, a rest, and one of those rear-assisted cocking crossbows.
They can shoot a balloon at 100 yards.
Yeah, exactly.
And so
much more proficient than a compound archer.
Correct. And so that's the thing that I think is going to be hard, because with archery season, you have a whole nother set of opportunity. It's generally better weather, especially for use. So I can see how it would be really easy to get your youths involved, specifically in deer hunting, with a crossbow, and kind of have your cake and eat it too. Because yes, there's a youth season in Illinois, but if that doesn't happen for your kid, well, now you got to take them out gun season. But you kind of want to hunt yourself. But it's like, man, I can take my kid out with a crossbow like these 7-8 weekends before firearm season here in Illinois, and still get them killed a deer, and kind of get the itch scratched and check the box, and that way, Daddy can hunt the rut or hunt the and I'm speaking honestly here,
absolutely,
like without guilt, because I'm not taking little Susie or little Johnny out to get them their deer this year. But when they get to that point now where they are getting old enough where you give them a little more rope and they're starting to kind of get to the bag limit stage as they're getting to setting the bar stage.
Yeah.
How do you
no? Take that tool away?
Exactly. And it's hard because it's legal. And well, what do you mean? But like, Brandon's dad lets him hunt with a crossbow and he doesn't care. It adds a little bit of, it's going to be a struggle. I think, and I don't know how to
I know how. Only let them go gun hunting until they're old enough to pull a bow back.
I know.
To 40 pounds and accurately hit.
Yeah, I know. But there's a lot of benefit to introducing your kids to archery season. Like I said, warmer weather. You're talking about a good opportunity.
You're not eating a gun season of your own.
But again, now I have a crossbow. I can hunt. I can hunt over this green food plot. And she got a scope. He's got a scope. I mean, he gets it drilling the bag target at 60 yards. Within 30 yards, a deer comes in. Should be dead. Like long-winded thing that I just is something to think about. And maybe if you don't give a crap whether your kid or you or anybody kills with a crossbow versus a compound or whatever, then don't even worry about it. But for some of the guys out there that are love archery, archery as far as a bow and an arrow, compound and longbow, I think this will be a struggle.
Yeah. So that's a good point. So going back to my first question that I asked you about an hour ago, your age, if you had to put a number on it, I have two questions for you. When are you going to take your kid hunting with you, not killing, but hunting and experiencing that with you for the first time? Go ahead and start there. What's your number? I know, like I said, we don't have kids.
3, 4, somewhere in there.
Take them with
when they're old enough to understand what we're doing.
Okay. What about their first kill? When do you think? And still depends, but
12 mark. With a year and a half delta. For we're talking turkeys and
so somewhere in between 10 and a half and 13 and a half.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and this is not being sexist, not being anything like that, but I think number probably has a chance to be younger if it's a boy, a little bit older if it's a girl. And it's just, I'm strictly talking about like body development, right? I mean, if they're old enough and they're strong enough to handle that gun and do it right, or that crossbow or whatever you're taking them hunting with, then you can kind of expose them into that situation for opportunities. Before then, break out the 22s, break out the 410s, go shoot a rack of rabbits and a pile of squirrels, like what I was talking about earlier. But the question that I'm answering is for turkeys, and whitetail, bigger game.
So take them with you 3, 4, 5. Let them kill it 10, 11, 12, 13. Okay, I like the answers. Let's get on with some would you rathers.
Yep.
Okay, number 1. Would you rather have a youth hunter, let's say it's your kid, shoot your number 1 buck or eat tag soup? And it's their first deer, by the way.
Man.
Exactly that's the scenario that we were talking about, right?
Well, it is, but it isn't, because then it's you let them, so they're going to harvest it. It's a guaranteed kill. I mean, because
no, they shoot it.
I'm going to stick to my guns. That number 1 deer is going to be something that's special to me. Not necessarily not special to them, but again, if it's their first time, like period, the end, like
they'd be just happier with a doe, just as happy.
Yes,
or a coyote.
And I don't want them to get conditioned to killing that deer. And the biggest thing is I don't want a bad experience to come out of it. I'm gonna tell them they can't shoot.
Eat the soup. Okay. Would you rather have your kid kill their first deer with a gun or a crossbow?
A gun.
Would you rather have a kid wound a deer for their first time or hit a deer in the spine and drop it, assuming in this scenario that they have a shotgun?
Drop it. 100%. That very similar to the first time I killed a deer, but still I think the ability to put a tag on it, even though it's not the way you want to, is way better of an outcome than not recovering.
Sure. And for those of you guys that are listening, no, we don't condone wounding deer and spining deer. This is just a would you rather hypothetical situation that doesn't exist in space and time anywhere other than in our brains. So, shoot or pass a 3-year-old buck in velvet from an outfitter that goes 140.
Shoot.
Me too. You just can't kill. You can't kill a velvet buck in Illinois. I'm shooting, 100% shooting. A tom with no spurs. He's got a beard, no spurs.
Shoot.
A tom with no beard. He's got spurs, no beard.
Definitely shooting. I'm a spur
last year.
guy.
Remember that? That was so weird.
Oh yeah.
That was a weird thing, man.
Man, when it comes to turkeys, if it's got a
Full fan, he's down. Yeah.
You better watch out, buddy.
Okay. A bearded hen on opener of turkey season.
Something I never shot. I guess I would.
We've seen a few of them.
Yeah, we've seen a few of them. I don't. On the opening day, no, I wouldn't. Unless like pipe dream years, I have this like epiphany of like the perfect turkey mount that I want. I want to take like a big ass oak tree that's got a ton of limbs, and I want to cut it in force like down the trunk tube ways, right? Mm-hmm. So think of it as a piece of a pie.
Yep.
And then it's got branches coming out.
And it sticks into a corner.
I've got like a Merriam's, an Eastern, a Rio, like mounted full strut, all of them on these branches. I think
an Osceola and a bearded hen.
It would be like a piece of furniture. But yeah, if I had the Grand Slam done, I didn't have like a bearded hen, then that'd be a cool thing to stick on a limb, or maybe on the bottom, like in some, whatever.
I think I got 2 dream mounts. My first dream mount being a caribou, just because my favorite mounts that I have are antelope, just because of how pretty the pelt is and how unique like that contrast between like the white fur hide and the black antlers. I just really think they're pretty. And a caribou is huge, much larger than an antelope. So number one, that. But number 2, I've always wanted, and we talk about it every time we go fishing in my pond, I swear. And I want that big stringer full of like 10 bluegills, but
that'd be so expensive.
Oh my God. I have never, you have 2 fish mounted, and to get like replica fish mounts done, it's like a certain dollar amount per inch.
Same thing with normal.
Yeah. And for a stringer of bluegills, it's just like thousands of dollars for this mount. And then I'm like, oh man, I just can't justify that. Even though sometimes when you go on vacation, like up to the north, in like old school log cabin, old timey places like in Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota, they'll have that big stringer full of bluegill, and you're like, man, that looks so cool. I want that.
Yep.
Or a stringer full of crappie, walleye, etc. But it's just a lot of cashola to fork over for some fish. But that ends us for Shooter Pass. Some notes. We will have a podcast specific to the launch party rolling down the pipe here within the next couple months. Right now it's looking really good. We're looking like we're gonna be able to hopefully pack that place. So that's again Friday, July 23rd. Our launch party, free beer, free gear. We're gonna show about 4 or 5 hunting films, and 20 deer heads are gonna be there.
There's gonna be more than that. I was talking to Wayne, so he thinks
there's more than 20.
He thinks we're gonna have like 34 heads.
How?
Because he's going to bring some of his personal pieces to show off.
Oh, boy.
So not only we have the 15 people who tapped into the code, saved some money getting in July, then there's all the animals that we harvested. Mm-hmm. And then Wayne, he's like to you, I'm like, dude, you can bring as much as you want. We can have a freaking fantastic deer show. And he's like, well, I want to bring a couple different mounts to show, what else I can do. He's like, I'd like to bring some ones with some open mouths and some other things, just so people can see the depth of work that I can offer with whitetails.
Some diverse stuff.
Yeah. And
cool.
I'm like, pour it on, man.
That's awesome.
He's like, well, they're going to be giants. I'm like, yeah, even better.
Cool. So to give you guys a good little virtual tour of the launch party, when you open up the doors of the Adler, we went and walked through the atrium there a couple times. There's going to be a couple different places in which you can get beer.
Yep.
There's a couple bars in the entryway there.
A couple places for hot concessions.
Yep. There's going to be I didn't know that there was going to be 30 plus deer heads there, but we're going to have 30 deer heads. So it's going to be kind of like a deer classic on a smaller scale, if you will. So there's going to be a bunch of deer heads only shot this year, and with the additional lanes locally. So that's going to be cool. Then you'll go down into the theater, and we've got about $15,000 worth of prizes that we're giving away. So that's going to be awesome. And we're going to unveil some of the newest episodes of our newest season. And again, that's Friday, July 23rd. Afterwards, we do have a room block at the Radisson Hotel across the street. It literally touches the theater on a skywalk.
Yep.
And you guys can walk over there. But before then, Front Street Brewing Company,
the after
down
party
there in Davenport as well, downtown Davenport. We're going to walk there, and that's where the after party is. So if you guys want to come in for a night where, again, our launch party is totally free. You're going to have to buy your beer once we go to Front Street, but the launch party is 100% scotch free. So it's a really cool event. People come from far and wide to see it, and I think that this year it'll probably be the one of the biggest shows at film festivals in the Midwest.
Yep. And full disclosure, we bought a jag of kegs, but after those run out, you guys will have to buy beer. Like we've never had a year that we didn't tap out of our free beer, but like just know full-heartedly.
We got 6 kegs this year.
Yeah. So I mean, there's going to be a plenty of free beer, but you might have to buy 1 or 2 towards the end.
Yep. So right here, if you have not done that yet, our Facebook group is called The Last Breath Inner Circle. You're going to want to tap into that. Garrett, you almost have a code, which will be coming down the pipe soon, enabling you guys to buy a cellular camera for about $60. So that's going to be clutch. I know that you and I are going to take advantage of that and put one of those suckers on every freaking tree. Why wouldn't we at this point? So that's, again, called The Last Breath Inner Circle. That's our Facebook group. And that's just a place where we like to give back to you guys, the people that support us and what we do. So our biggest favor that you guys could do for us would just be to tell somebody about our podcast, tell somebody about our show. We think that once they're here and once they hear what we have to say and watch our film, that they're going to enjoy what they see. And, having good conversations about things that don't necessarily have a right or wrong answer, a huntroversy, if you will. That's kind of like the centerpiece of our podcast, and our goal is to kind of make you think about some things. So thank you again for listening to the Last Breath Huntcast. We will see you next Monday morning when we get into some more turkey talk and tactic. And until then, don't waste it.